Welcome to the Trauma Informed Lens podcast. I'm your host, Matt Bennett. Each episode we talk about the research and practical aspects of the trauma informed movement. This podcast is not designed to replace mental health services. If you feel uncomfortable or triggered by our discussion, please consider seeking your own trauma treatment. In no way is seeking treatment an admission of weakness. It is a chance to build resiliency and experience post-traumatic growth. You can find show notes, resources, and more at traumainformedlens.org. Welcome, friends, to the Trauma Informed Lens podcast. We are back here today with Olga and Jonathan for another Self-Care Circle episode. So I'm really excited, and this was one of the reasons I really wanted to get on you two out to my listeners originally. I mean, you have so much expertise in so many areas that I just knew this would be a really great resource. But one of the things that I've been so impressed with both of you is how you think about and integrate rituals into group settings. I know, Olga, when we worked at Denver Children's Home together, you ran some of the most beautiful, meaningful, the meetings were crazy as most meetings are, but the beginning and the ending they were sandwiched between this just glorious rituals that you would put us through. And Jonathan, I know seeing your work in Vegas with the folks that you were working with at the time, just your thinking around rituals blew me away. So I don't know if I have anything to add to this episode, but that is okay. So I'm just excited. Let's just jump into this. We talked about the individual rituals with self-care last time, but it is two people who I just admire beyond belief on this topic. I would love, Jonathan, to start with you. How do you look at this, maybe from a philosophical perspective? What are your goals in integrating rituals, and just you throw in some of that deeper thinking that I love from you as well. So I'll kind of hand it over to you to introduce at least your thinking on this topic.
Sure. Some of the philosophical points would be that when we talk about burnout, I think sometimes the systems we work in and human services place too much onus on the staff member themselves. You are burning yourself out. There's may not be enough kind of shared responsibility around the system. And so last week we talked about self-care, and then this week we started to call it, Matt and I made this up a couple years, we started to call it us care. It's us taking care of us, right?
Oh, I love that.
We're in the midst of a pandemic. Public health principles and practices are becoming obviously more and more relevant. And one of the principles in public health is that prevention is less costly than repair. And so on those two levels, both at the individual and then at the group level, are we taking care of each other? Another point would be a really great book. It's called A Different Drummer. It's by M. Scott Peck. And he defines community as the place that people go to heal. Mm-hmm. And we, in his kind of conception of community, the weakest and the most vulnerable are in the center, not pushed out. Mm-hmm. And that when you push out the most vulnerable, you're really running a business. So that's kind of the theoretical pieces, but just working with our frontline staff in Vegas and then now here in Denver, we talked about this in our first kind of installment. How can we look out for each other? How do we identify those signs of burnout? Creating your own tribe and your own support system in the workplace is so important. And then I'd really like to know kind of, Olga, if this made you think of anything, and we'll talk about some more practices that we can do in groups.
Yeah, I wrote a list down, so I'm going to grab my little list here. So I want to
finally someone is organizing this podcast.
I'm just like, because I wanted to make, because group stuff is so critical right now.
Absolutely.
I think community is so critical right now, more than ever. And one of the themes, before I go into some of the rituals, some of the themes that I'm like hearing from clients and from colleagues and friends is this like the missing experience of being in contact with each other, right? Even though we're doing this virtual, sort of thing here, right? That there's this primitive yearning to connect with our tribe. And and I'm just seeing like people really struggling with that right now. And one of the things that I'll say is what I'm noticing even more so with others and myself, even the perceived perception that we are connected to others and community helps us through this time, right? That we know, like I know for myself, I know that I have groups of people that I love and that I can connect with them at any point, and that gets me through. And so I'm really recommending people to even if you can't connect with your tribes or your communities, how do you they're still there. We just can't be with them. And that's a source of nourishment and resource for people. So I just want to put that out there. In terms of rituals, I think about it in a variety of ways. In terms of group rituals, I think about how do we do that in the workplace? How do we do that in our families and friend community? And then how do we do that in the spiritual realms? And, I think for employees and for many of us who work for organizations, it's critical to, one is to find rituals of celebration. To talk about greater sense of purpose in our lives. I'm encouraging groups to do accountability. I'm going to bring this down here, like the sun's coming down a little bit. Accountability buddies within each other, within groups, to really hold each other accountable towards self-care and excellence right now, to push each other, when we're doing, everyone's doing this thing right now, right? We're going up and down, up and down. But rituals are celebration rituals. Rituals related to acknowledging each other for the work that you do.
Absolutely.
Right? And, rituals about having an opportunity to talk about what's happening in our world right now and to be supported and we're all in it together. How to bring in everyone's perspective and okay, if this works for me, maybe that'll work for you. So I think about that and acknowledging all coworkers, but also the spiritual realm, which I can get to later. And also, and then what we do with our friends and our family members. How do we do gratitude connections? How do we celebrate, and sadly, grief rituals right now? I mean, there's just so much going on in our world. So I'm going to stop there. But just wanted to.
Yeah, what I see, Olga and Matt, is we're at a crossroads. And it's this intersection. Matt and I have been talking about this for a while now, kind of ancient and modern.
Yeah.
This marriage and this dance. We used to call ourselves modern healers, modern helpers. And then, one of the themes of this talk is modern ceremony. And everything you described, I think, fits in that category. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that sticks out with me and I've, Jonathan, especially witnessing some of the stuff that you did, just blew me away because of the intentionality of it. And that's, Olga, too, what I've seen from you. I mean, just to do something, because I've always been very, and I have to go back a little bit because I've been sort of in the trainer realm. So when I think a lot of my work now, it's what happens in the midst of a training day, which you're often in a room with people that don't gather very often. So while I have those little rituals, I am trying to, and I'd love to see, because you guys have really, I think, dug deep in this, create some sense of community. And from a trauma-informed perspective, what I want to do for my audience, when I talk about the most horrific things that happen to human beings, I want to create a sense of social safety, psychological safety, so we can actually enjoy the experience of exploring trauma, right? Now, the goal is for post-traumatic growth at the other end. So, I'm not here to celebrate trauma. Trauma sucks. It will always suck. But there's this understanding if we give the people the right resources. So there's a lot of what I try to do is create that sense of safety, whether it's at a small group table of strangers that then can kind of translate out to an energy of a big group. But obviously with 6 hours before you jump back on the plane, you get a little bit of that. So when we talk about, Jonathan, let me throw it back to you, that community, because again, one of the things that really, with my experience working with your folks in Vegas, was it was one of the tighter groups I have seen. And not everybody worked. In fact, most people didn't work for the same organization. It was quite kind of a diverse, both geographically within your service area and also ethnically. I mean, it was a very diverse group. And just how you kind of approach that, because I know you have that strategic thinking as well as to build that community, and why was that important for you?
Yeah, I'm totally frightened. Like, it was not, I can call it strategic now. The whole process, maybe 5 years ago, it was organic. It was organic change. It was what you taught me, active listening, right? Listen until it hurts. So just going back into my public health career, I learned from my mentor, her name is Aurora Wong, that we did work with the hepatitis B community, so persons most impacted by that virus, and they were Asian and African immigrants. But in that setting, which were community health settings, many of them Asian health centers, Asian spiritual centers, that's when I saw true community health, like what that looked like. And it was embedded in communities, and it was when it was us serving us, typically people that look like you, and then it was diverse stakeholders. So that was my first sense of, and getting a feeling and how great that felt, and pouring into that. Next, in HIV care, then became really interested in workshops, which is, I know, Matt's forte. I've seen Matt just like light up a room and blow away a room, and we've done that together. And so around how that formed is through those trainings, I got kind of this workshop excitement, this workshop bug. How do you design, develop, and deliver a workshop that people feel welcome in, that they feel supported, and to use one of Olga's words, that it's that nourishment piece. So whether it be your professional community or your personal community, these can be places where we can stabilize and treat trauma symptoms. Maybe this is our supplement until we can actually feel encouraged to access services or can afford to access services. There's that piece. And then we just started to experiment, Matt. So we would start our workshops with a moment of silence. You could open them up with a story. You could open them up with a poem. I teach our different workshop leaders to take risks. You've taught me the same. And so I tried to attempt to sing once, to try to open up the meeting with song.
That's
some
awesome.
other things we looked at, it was really bad. Some other things we looked at would be group value setting. I think what you spoke to, Matt, when I hear you talking, those are kind of little pop-up communities, right? Mm-hmm. But we've done an exercise where people just talk about their favorite quotes, and we tease out different words, and that really formed organically into these guiding principles. There's a great book I saw the speaker talk on the news once called The Art of Gathering, and do you know about this, Olga?
I know about it, but you probably know more of it than I do.
No, just so she pulls out kind of these 3 key things when we meet, which is sometimes we get too focused on the things. You know, we're public health people. We are psychologists, and so we want to grind out and create content and pump things out, and we start to forget about the people, right? The connection that we're doing now. We don't adjourn well, is what she said. So at the close, I don't know if you've ever been in a spiritual community where adjourning, you know, that hands in kind of thing is really important. And then this last piece, which I'd love to know how you all think about this, is we don't do controversy well. She calls it good controversy. So as you see, can be losing our ability to disagree and disagree safely. And that, I think that goes along with the psychological safety that you were talking about, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that you're saying that, Jonathan, because I think that's always one of the missing pieces in community and group discussions is that how do we disagree in a way that feels safe and that we can put it out there. And he just reminded me of the importance of whoever is leading a community, right, or a group, a ritual, is really being transparent, really creating safety, allowing for differences, right? Because that's important. How do you start a group process, a ritual or a meeting? How do you navigate it towards the middle and the ending? It's incredible. It's critical. So, Jonathan, I do agree with you that how we start a group, whether it's a meeting, whether it's a ritual, whether it's personal, whether it's business, whether it's spiritual, like how we, what we do to create, right? This, I call it the bubble, the community bubble.
Yeah.
Like, how do you come towards like yourself and others in the context of this moment, right? And create a safe place where we can be really present with each other in whatever rituals we do.
Yeah.
And how do we continue to facilitate it even when it's difficult? Right?
Yep.
And how do we end it? The ending is also critical. Like, what are the lessons learned? What are we grateful for? What are we like? Are there repairings that needed to be done? Just, I don't know. There's, the beginning, middle, and the end is so critical when we're creating rituals or some group process.
Sure, and then making it fun, right? Like bringing bringing that celebratory energy that you're talking about. And so, Matt, in terms of going down to the neurobiology level, if you read the book The Body Keeps Score, he talks about dance and theater as being these restorative acts that ancient people relied on dance and theater after epidemics and after wars to rehumanize and re-civilize themselves.
Yeah.
And we use that in our group gatherings. So we would do group stretching, or we would do some of the kind of low intensity EMDR work, or if you just put in the breath app that comes on some Apple phones or on YouTube, but just that minute or 2 minutes beginning any gathering, the same bubble that you're talking about, Olga, and often we would arrange ourselves in a circle if we could at all possible. Pat Ogden has a psychosensory motor technique, and she talks about expanding our movement vocabulary. So what she found with sexual assault survivors is that as she expanded their physical resilience, then their psychological resilience also began to expand. So again, just yoga and dance have been really great go-tos for me, and encouraging people that you don't have to be a professional and that any little bit matters, and to start small, like we talked about last week.
Thank you for that, Jonathan. It reminds me of one of the things that I'm discussing with a few groups that I'm involved in, spiritual groups, and I'm hearing it from clients as well, and colleagues and friends. The need, there's a lot of death right now.
Right.
And how do we, and we're quarantined, right? So there's this level of grief that's unfolding in front of us right now. And how do we create rituals for the dying?
Yep.
when we can't get to them. I mean, I'm hearing that constantly every day with my clients on a daily basis. You know, someone died. I couldn't get to them. They died alone. And, you know, the importance of coming together as groups and creating what I call death rituals at this
Wow.
stage. You know, and, you know, I'm encouraging people, like, what do you believe in? What's your spirituality? Because death rituals at this point, it any one of us can use, depending. It doesn't matter what religion or spirituality we embrace. So I just want to bring that up because that's one that's coming up more and more for me with clients and friends and family is, okay, I can't be there. So what are the rituals that we do individually, and what are the rituals we do as a community of friends or family together to honor, you know, honor the people that have left.
Oh, good. That's amazing. Do you walk them through it in any way? What would a death ritual or ceremony look like?
There are different death rituals, right? I think it for me, it always depends on what a client or someone believes in, because it's so connected to what people's spirituality. And so I just want to honor that first, that I always want to be mindful of including whatever spirituality people use, and then creating some of the basic rituals around loss, which is how do we, what are the elements that we use, right? And including elements of like nature element and water element, the earth element, fire element. So we're using the elements of the land and the world to be able to connect to do some sort of ceremony, to be able to connect and say our goodbyes, or because in many communities, right, as we know, rituals and ceremonies of death is critical for our grieving process.
Yeah.
To be able to have some closure. And there's so many people that are not having closure right now. So it's critical to really be able to bring people together and say, first of all, it's okay to grieve. Two, it's okay to have some sort of ceremony or ritual, even if you're not in front of the person who has just passed. And how do you have support of a community who actually witnesses that with you? That is so powerful.
Right.
You know, I was recently in a death ritual, a grief ritual, actually, probably like a couple of months ago before this all unfolded. And the power, and I was with an African shaman, and there was a group of us that's been mentoring with him. And we created this beautiful, beautiful, grief death ritual that was so powerful to be witnessed by others, and to be able to be ourselves and do whatever we need to do that sometimes we're not able to do in the context of our life right now. Right?
Yeah. Can I share more on what you're speaking to? So I love, in terms of like the natural elements. So I brought this book, which is the book of Ceremony.
Yes.
And she discusses bringing all those natural elements that you talk about, bringing nature into your home, having a sacred space, right? And then also what you talked about when people get together. This author says that rituals are things we do alone, and that ceremonies are rituals we do together. And then different blessings that are in accordance with that person's spiritual beliefs, like you're saying, always honoring that first, right?
Exactly. And is that Sandra Ingerman that you're pulled up there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love her. I mentored with her for years. So she's an incredible soul. So
she thinks, and I know Matt has begun to talk about this, Ingerman believes that we're in the midst of a shamanic awakening, like a very large one. Shamans are believed to be those that saw in the dark, and we're in a little bit of darkness right now.
We are. Yeah, one of my mentors, and Sandra being one of them, who I studied for a long time with her, is Malidoma Somé, and he put out something that's quite similar. That of course I'd love to share with both of you. And also keeping in mind, we're talking about shamanism here, but it's also all spirituality, all religion. It's like this is the time, or if you don't have, if you don't connect to spirituality or religion, you connect to something. Like this is the time to use your rituals and ceremonies, or connect with community to help you, just get through this pandemic we're going through, and the loss and the grief.
I wonder, one of the things that I think a lot of people, and I would include myself to some extent in this, not so much in trainings, because I feel like I can go into just a different personality in some ways when I train, which I enjoy that aspect of it.
I've seen that part of you.
If you see me in other settings, Olga had a get together we were all at, and I like to find the most comfy chair and just get comfortable. And if anybody wants to talk to me, they can come to my corner and talk to me. Very, very different than the Matt who's up in front of 100+ people, trying to put on a good training. But I think for folks like me, there's a little bit, especially when I think about myself more in an organizational context, there's sort of this, I think, hesitation. There's will people, and I've experienced this before with people that should know better, by the way, Dr. Jerry Yeager for one of them, where like I tried to get people to practice mindfulness in a meeting. It just kind of devolved. Like, and it was a big risk for me. Like I was like, I put myself out there because I was just learning it myself. And I just like, hey, let's regulate the amygdala for a minute or two before we get into it. What I knew was going to be a pretty contentious meeting. But I just kind of wonder if you have any advice, because I see you both as sort of, you've gotten to an advanced level of practitioner, so to speak, around the ceremony piece of this. Your personalities, I think, fit really well into helping people connect deeper. What about somebody who's like, my team is okay. We have our strengths, we have our weaknesses. We may be under a lot of stress right now, so maybe we're showing more of the weaknesses than strength, or maybe vice versa. What are maybe some practical things people can think about to make this a genuine experience for folks? Because I think I know I felt that is like, oh man, I wish I could do what Olga did, but I just can't read as beautifully as she does. And I don't have that voice. Like you hear, just like, Olga, she could be reading like the classifieds on Craigslist. And I think we'd all be like, oh, she's so like enlightened. Like, so what about folks like me who don't quite, we get anxious around this stuff. Are there any suggestions you can give the less enlightened among us?
I'll say some practical things, I think, because not everyone is wanting a lot of the stuff that that we were just talking about. I think it's critical in workplaces to talk, like, to celebrate strengths at this point, like having that form of ritual, to say what you're, celebrate, the triumphs, anything that anyone has done in the workplace that feels really good. People want to feel like they're having some sort of impact and that they're doing a good job and that they're being seen. And so ways of recognizing employees, from the small things to the medium to the big things, right? What are you grateful for each other? I mean, it's so easy to go into the negative, like, I don't like what you do there, but it's like, how do you like support each other and be each other's accountability buddies for greatness, especially
Yeah.
during this time, right?
Yeah.
So, there's simple rituals like thank you, like your thank yous, like what you did today, recognizing someone for doing something, celebrate, like even the little things, someone's birthday. Like, I'm so happy you're alive, your birth, your day of birth, right? So those are some small things that, some practical things that I just like to incorporate that just feels good, Um,
I love it.
yeah.
I love what you talked about, accountability partners around greatness. I would add a great time to reconnect to what your values are.
Yep.
In the work that you do, why did you start doing what you're doing now?
Exactly.
Thinking about that with yourself and then sharing it in your work team. How many people helped you get to where you are?
Yep.
Those pieces, and then going a little bit outside of your comfort zone and asking your team, what do you need right now?
Yeah.
What do you need? And if we can't give it in the team, we're going to ask someone else outside, but at least we're going to start having that conversation about needs at work, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I'd love to follow up on that, because this conversation, and I don't see this as much, but maybe let's say about 12 or 15 years ago, as a young trauma trainer out there, and realizing people wanted to hear what I had to say, which was kind of fun for the first time in my life. But there were these, especially around Dr. Bloom's work around the sanctuary model. And I just want to put out there, Dr. Bloom is one of my heroes. So I'm just throwing an observation out there, less than any sort of criticism. And I've experienced both sides of this as well. As she, and I haven't heard her talk for a while. I've read everything I think she's put out in her career, but it's been a while. She used to have these community meetings, and I thought these things were like worth a dissertation in and of themselves. And basically these community meetings started out, so basically you started out all your meetings with a check-in of basically answering the question, I believe it was just, how are you doing today? And I've seen that go well because we're checking in with ourselves, right? We have to really answer that question generally. I've got to check in with myself, and I have to be vulnerable to share that with folks. And so from a philosophy standpoint, I really love these. But then what I was hearing more and more is people hated them. People, as I have to talk about my bleep feelings one more time, I'm going to lose it. So like there were these, some people would just grab on, and I saw some early sanctuary programs that actually on a grant, I went and got to visit these mostly on the East Coast, and saw it done beautifully, but also I saw the kind of the ugly side where people no longer want to talk about anything about trauma because the community meetings turned them off. So I wonder about that balance, knowing you might have a group of 12, 20, depending on how big your group is. Some folks, I'll just throw us out there, Olga, the therapist in the room will be happy to take 10 minutes to talk about all of our personal trauma and drama going on. We love that stuff. But there might be also, I love it when there's like an accountant in the group too, who really doesn't want to get in touch with his or her inner child at the beginning of a meeting. So I wonder how you have, because I've seen, again, both of you get to that deep level while doing it in the same safe way. And I just kind of wonder, for maybe the person sitting in the room to say, I love y'all, but we got some stuff to get done. And I got a lot of stuff to do. So to hear about Jonathan's feelings for the next 15 minutes, I got a lot to get done. So I just kind of wonder how you balance those two pieces.
It's an interesting, it is a balance. I think one is really letting people know that it's okay to share whatever they, like to have boundaries.
Yeah.
It's like, and I think I said that in our last talk, that, you want to, as a leader, if you're facilitating something, you want to make sure, especially in the workplace, you want to make sure that whatever people, like you're asking people to talk about, that feels like they're not putting themselves out at some risk, both personally and in the group. Again, being mindful that it's a work setting. It's not, I always tell people it's a work setting. It's not group therapy. So we want to really be careful of letting people know we're going to check in, and these are the rules around checking in. I think rules are important. You don't want to be rigid with them, but the more that we can be clear, consistent, and predictable, the more that creates safety in a group setting. And remember, this is not group therapy. I remind people of that. This isn't about sharing your trauma. If you decide to do that with someone, that's okay. But it's really about collectively, how are we doing? How do we support each other? And what feels appropriate to talk without triggering people. It's a workplace setting, so we want to be really mindful about that. And so I usually set the tone from the beginning, like what's expected and what's not expected, and it's okay to share what you want to share and have some boundaries around it.
100%. Yeah, and how we roll with it, just like I said, in terms of being organic, as we did encounter that, Matt, in our public health workshop. So some folks are like, I'm just here to learn the technical pieces. I'm really done with all these icebreakers. And so what we did is we differentiated those meetings. So we would have gatherings that were social and voluntary, and did some of the regulation practices and some of the around vulnerability and shame. And then if it was just a purely technical meeting, we would advertise that and you were welcome to come. All the while always telling folks that you participate at a level that's meaningful to you.
Bingo. I love that.
Yeah, very cool. So any other thoughts as we kind of start our wrap up? I've got one last question, but I want to throw out any bigger thoughts as people may start to think about integrating this into their groups.
I think that what I would say more than ever, reach out to your communities, whether your friend communities, your work community, like colleagues, and even if it's virtual at this point, the sense of coming together, and it's really resourceful right now. The community is so huge right now, and the way that things are, our world is unfolding right now, that we need each other more and more. So I just want to remind people to reach out, or if you know someone who's not reaching out, bring them into your community. There are a lot of people isolating out there. So.
Great. Jonathan, any last big thoughts on this before I throw my last question out?
Maybe just small thoughts. How important this is that Olga was saying. We were never meant to do this alone. And whether that group is at work or at home, it's chosen family. You want to find safe and supportive people, and you're going to share a little bit, kind of stack vulnerability over time. You're going to share, not overshare, but just share, and then you're going to check in and see what the outcome of that share was. If it was an unsuccessful share and it felt uncomfortable and that person started talking about your business, then you might want to move on. There's lots of people in the world, and you will find your tribe.
Excellent. So my big, I'll throw one out there. Maybe I can contribute a little bit to this, but I would always, especially during this time, think about psychological safety. I always love to get that grounded. Google did I think, really groundbreaking study, and Google asked, why do some of our teams perform excellent and others, even though they have all the PhDs in the world and all the accolades, don't seem to have that same synchronicity? And here is a tech company, and the biggest variable they found in whether or not a team would perform at a high level was psychological and social safety. So I think that a lot of people that you connect with, both on a business and personal, are not feeling safe right now. So I think just that extra attention to that. And that leads me to my final big question. How the heck do we do this in Zoom, in Google Hangouts? I love watching the news right now. One is because when everybody's doing Zoom, I'm looking a lot better looking nowadays. Like I say I'm kind of below average on the gift of good looking and handsomeness, but it's great to see people without their makeup on and their hair growing out. Like, it's like, okay, I'm not that ugly anymore. Like I might be, more average than I thought. So, but I also, these news shows, I limit myself, but the ones I watch is like their technology freezes up on them. So there's like this almost, it's amazing. My Zoom seems to work better than CNN Zoom most of the time, which is weird that they can't get better internet connection. But how do we do this if you've got 8 people, virtually? I think some of this could really apply, taking a little bit of time out. But I think as a lot of people are coming, not feeling necessarily safe, not having the social connection that allows me to co-regulate with my workers, and not everybody has a spouse, partner, kids at home, so the isolation is even greater. How do you have any ways to take this into our quarantine situation here to help groups maybe think about little ways to bring some of this into their current reality?
What I see folks doing is my dance fitness community, which is, a safe place for women to love their bodies and to sweat and rely on each other. They're getting real creative. So they use the same Zoom function that you're talking about, Matt. They post challenges to each other. The instructor will post the teaching, and then folks will record little snippets of themselves and then post it to Instagram or post it to Facebook Live. My chosen family, my spiritual family back home in Nevada and California, we have all migrated to House Party, which is just tons of board games. And sometimes that is, if you're not extremely social, sometimes working those games in can help mitigate kind of those awkward silences in conversation. I say get really, really creative, and you see people doing it now.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, okay, what about you?
Yeah, I would agree, Jonathan. I think what I'm finding is that there's just a variety, like a lot of the stuff that we I've done outside of here in community, we're bringing it via Zoom or via whatever other platform we're using. But everything from playing games together, to meditating together, to dancing together, to having that social hour with family, and actually like even taking photos. Like that's been really sweet to like take photos of everyone. Like I just did that with all my siblings, and to be like an example, like Sunday I spent a little bit of time with my siblings for about an hour or so, and we laughed, we cried together, we take photos, with other people. We're finding that we're like, oh, this is my house. You want to see my house now? And so it's like, okay, it's like, it's a different level of intimacy. It's just, we're not touching each other, but we can still feel each other collectively. But yeah, there's all these, wonderful ways of connecting via Zoom. What I'm telling people too, which is I'm finding myself, I'm starting to have a lot of eye stuff happening. Yeah. I'm doing this all day, and I'm finding that I also encouraging people to take a little time out too, to do some alone self-care. I mean, I know we're talking about community, but I also find that when we're doing a lot of this too, it can feel like a lot, and that it's okay, because I've been hearing people saying, I feel guilty wanting to take space. No, it's okay. Go hide for an hour or so. Take time out from the virtual life. So I just want to name that too.
Excellent. Well, this has been a great show. I've been really looking forward to talking to you both about this topic. So, since we're all quarantined, we're trying to do a few more of these in quicker successions. So, I have and I'd love if any listeners want to throw out any suggestions around this, because one of the big challenges I see with a lot of people's self-care right now, and I see this both sort of at the hypo-aroused place where you're just stuck inside, and the stimulus around you has been narrowed down to your house, your apartment. But I also see this with people going to the front lines every day, the physicians, nurses. I've had really good advice, and I want to throw this out there because I need to think about it a little bit too, because I don't have a off the cuff answer. I oftentimes with self-care, I call it giving yourself permission to survive for a period of time. So you've got to write a big grant. You've got a hard piece coming up. 2 weeks, you just have to have a plan, not necessarily to thrive at self-care. You need to just survive it. How are you going to survive that? And giving yourself in some way psychological permission, maybe not to be your best self, but to get through the period to get your work done. We are now in a stage that, again, I don't have necessarily a great answer for people. That's why I love us to think about this and come together is, what if that survival thing is not 2 weeks, but 2 months? Or maybe what if it turns into 10 months? So I would love to hear any listeners' feedback on this as well. So I want to throw that challenge out for us is, I know how to tell you to get through a couple hard weeks. My answer for how you get through maybe 4 months of going into what probably looks like a war zone for a lot of my friends in New York and other big cities. I know healthcare for the homeless right now is really stretched in all directions in a lot of places. So I propose that as our next small little topic to tackle next time, if you guys are game for it.
I think that's a great idea.
And again, listeners, please, traumainformedlens.org. You can find my contact there as well. We'll put show notes up. If you need to see faces, we throw this up on YouTube as well under the Trauma Informed Lens podcast. So we thank you for joining us. Please take care of yourselves. Also, if you're finding topics we might not be covering, send them our way as well.
Oh gosh, yeah, that'd be awesome.
I love gathering with these two great minds and talking about this stuff. So everybody take care, traumainformedlens.org, and hopefully if Olga's dog doesn't run away again, we'll see you very soon. Bye, everybody. We'll tell you that later.